All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ over there in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The legend himself, freshly tanned. I can. Yeah, I can.
Calm down. Not a tan. This is
You
like
tan?
a very light browning. It's like when you leave a piece of toast in the toaster for like 20 seconds.
I don't even know what. Yeah, that's about right. Like, hey, I'm out here not tanning either. The two non-tan people to this degree. I will say though, my wife is now convinced that I am overselling my limitations in terms of tanning, because the back of my neck is a crazy farmer's tan right now, and it usually does in the summer, and I don't realize it. Like, that's the place I guess I just forget when I'm walking around and doing stuff and doing my old man walks during the day. And it's just, I don't know, that area tans, but nothing else does. And I'm terrified. I don't want to battle the sun, Will. I'm too old to battle the sun. And I don't like being burned at all. I even put on a pretty good amount 2 years ago in Jacksonville. I still got burned the first day at the beach. And I was miserable. Like, at the rest of the week. You're like, I don't like going to battle with the sun, Will. I lose every time.
No thanks.
No. We're too old for that. We're too wise. We're too old. But Will, you were on vacation. You got some time away. You've run some mileage. It's mid-June now. How many miles are you up to this month?
This month I don't know off the top of my head, but I know for the year I'm at like 710, 715, somewhere in there. Okay. Per Strava.
Is that your app of choice to calculate it?
I was a big Runkeeper guy for a while, and I know my buddy Matt is huge. I think Nike has one. It's like Nike Run or whatever you log theirs. But Strava is just so much better for data for me, which, fits my building. So I'm a big Strava head these days.
There you go. Not a sponsor, could be.
Fingers crossed. I would love it for you and for me.
Yeah, like, why not? Substack. We need to get that in. Like, maybe that's the next evolution for Substack, is presenting sponsors for the Substack pages. And if there's one thing Will loves, it's advertisements.
I would. Now, let me clarify. I would accept advertisements on my website if it's like, it's got to be some like podunk local HVAC company. No, or like, I don't know, like Eco Heating and Air. If you're interested and you want to pay like $12 a month or something, let's link up.
$12 a month? That's low. You're selling really short here for a sponsorship deal.
I don't know. You got to think of something.
$1,200 maybe.
$1,200. Yeah, it could be. Now we need an exclusive title sponsor for Show Me My Opponent this year, so I'll have to dig one out of the garbage bin for that.
I mean, we got some over here. What's Remedy doing? Let's make Remedy the presenting sponsor.
It could get Remedy. Need it would be great to get a little Applebee's deal going.
There you go. You could also do Applebee's. There's all kinds.
Big Knoxville thing. Applebee's. Nowhere else.
You say that, but I've been in Knoxville for 3 years fully now. Well, I don't think I've ever seen an Applebee's in Knoxville. Where is the Applebee's?
I think there's 3 or 4 left. There's it's Easttown.
Never over there.
North Knoxville still has one. There's one at Cedar Bluff, and then I think there's like one in Maryville, maybe.
Man, I have no idea where the one in Cedar Bluff is. I don't think I've ever seen it.
It's I of course very rarely go to one, but they do exist.
There you go.
For good or for bad, they exist.
Or Big Ed's Pizza. Let's make that the presenting sponsor here.
Great I would pizza. Happily take a little Big Ed sponsorship.
Yeah.
I'm selling my soul for Culver's. I would do Culver's as the lead sponsor.
Yeah.
Think that would be good.
Never had Culver's.
It's very good. Okay. A lot of people, what I've noticed is that people who actually live in the upper Midwest are like, it's not very good. It's just media. It's fast food. And it's like, okay, it's all I've got. Okay? Like, I'm not asking for fine dining here. I know what I'm getting into. It's the same as when people complain about going to McDonald's. You know what you're getting into.
That's true.
There's a baseline.
Do you think you're more like Midwestern or Southern to people who meet you for the first time?
Midwestern. I don't feel like I have many. Yeah. Well, I think there's. It's hard to define like Midwestern versus Southern traits. I think like being more stoic is probably a Midwestern trait. I have noticed, for better or for worse, that I've started slipping, because my dad does this, into calling supermarkets like the Krogers or whatever. He's big on calling Walmart the Walmarts.
Okay.
Or my personal favorite is the Cracker Barrels, implying that he's going to multiple in a day.
Well, we just lost them too. Such a shame. Another one's fallen. Cracker Barrel.
Another one's fallen. I can't wait until they come for that's the real test is going to be when they come for like McDonald's or something, like something that's universally agreed upon as like everyone generically likes it. Like McDonald's, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of something.
I mean, Chick-fil-A's up there, man. Chick-fil-A's
Well, yeah, they were trying to cancel the chicken.
I was going to say that was the number one for me, where I was like, Chick-fil-A is like this is going to be
I don't think they can. I don't think they'll pull it off.
No, I don't think so either.
That's got a real. Have you ever seen Burn After Reading?
Yes.
Amazing movie.
Yeah.
But it's got a real strong Brad Pitt's character vibe to it, of where they're going with some of these.
Yeah.
They're just like, we're gonna throw it at the wall, and it's like, this is the real shit, man, or whatever it is he says.
Yeah, that's funny. Will Warren. College basketball has been happening over the last few weeks away. I've missed talking ball with you, sir, and just catching up with you in general. And something that happened since the last time, because it's the off season, so we can play catch up. It's okay to do that on this very show, sir. Elliot Cadeau, is it Cadeau? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
That's a great question.
I've only read it, never
I'm
heard
gonna
it.
Find out in November.
Okay, perfect. Well, he
I'll find out when they
reclassified
play
for
their
UNC.
first game. Now,
what does that mean for him and UNC?
Well, it's good for him because I think I don't feel like this is a big controversial take anymore, because it seems like a Jonathan, is it Givony? I don't know how you say
I've
his
always
name.
said Gavoni, but I could be wrong.
It could be Givony, the Draft Express guy.
Yes.
I think he came out and said that this is the worst draft class in a decade, this next season, not 2023, but 2024. Yeah. And so, that was why I was personally a little surprised Julian Phillips didn't like come back and transfer somewhere, because he probably would have been a top 20 pick. And he's probably not going to go in the first round this year unless like somebody reaches. But for Cadeau, I think it's great because you go from, we don't really know enough about 2025 yet, but now you're moving up a grade. You're going to play for a team that I actually quite like. I think North Carolina's probably got like one of the 15 to 20 best rosters.
Okay.
Which is, I feel it's kind of weird to come into this where I think people are actually underrating them a hair this coming season, where their roster's got a little more potential for me than last year. Everybody was sort of crowning them, and it was just going to be really hard to replicate what they were doing.
What do you like more about this roster this year than last year?
Well, Caleb Love's not on it, for one. Sorry. But I think it's a little more balanced. I think they're going to be less clunky on offense, because there was a lot of possessions last year where it's not UNC specific, but I'm reminded of a GIF from the Michigan year where they were number 2 opening the year and then barely snuck into the tournament. Made the Sweet 16, whatever. But Hunter Dickinson ran like a pick and roll set that he ran a billion times the previous year with like Franz Wagner and Eli Brooks and whatnot. And he like rolled to the basket and threw his hands up because no one else knew how to run the set. And that was what it felt like watching UNC's offense last year. It kind of felt like 5 guys who met in the parking lot for the first time before the game, which was stunning because they were all returners, more or less. And so I think getting Harrison Ingram on the roster and out of the shackles of playing under Stanford will help. Cormac Ryan is an underrated player that I like. And Cadeau is going to be nice because it's going to take RJ Davis hopefully off of main ball handling duties and spread the wealth a little bit. Having Baycott back as your center and roll man is really nice too. I don't know. It's a pretty good mix of like old and young, where you've got Cadeau, this fresh blood that can probably be less chaotic than Caleb Love can be, and we're gonna get to Love in this episode. But you get Davis for his senior year. You kind of know what you're getting there, but like Davis, I like more than Love, and I think he adds a better net impact on the whole, which I feel like is just an agreeable take at this point. Baycott back, Harrison Ingram, Ryan. I like what they're doing, and I think it's going to be a more balanced group for UNC. better all around. Do I think they're the best team in the ACC? Probably not, but I think they're going to. They'll be more like what I thought they would be last year than they ended up being.
So obviously Duke's going to be better on paper than UNC before the year. Are they the number 2? Is there a scenario where the ACC's 2 best teams are Duke, UNC?
I think they're pretty easily the 2 best. I'm honestly, I was quite shocked to, I think this was Heat Check that did this, their consensus top 25. I was really stunned to see Miami in their top 10. And it's zero disrespect to what Miami's doing. I mean, I kind of got steamrolled there. But, I mean, you don't have Isaiah Wong back. You did not have a deep roster in the first place. They really haven't done anything in the portal aside from get Matthew Cleveland, who I'm pretty lukewarm on. That's a lot riding on the shoulders of Pack, Miller, and O'Meara. And it's a perilously thin roster that's basically dependent on them being a top 3 offense for 2 years running, which... I mean, they could be, but I don't think that's going to be a super reliable strategy when I already know they can't play defense. So I think Duke and UNC are the top 2, and you could argue, I think you'd probably put Miami 3, like somewhere in the 30s, but it's not going to be a deep ACC. It's going to be Duke and UNC, Duke probably a step ahead, and then a lot of just giant question marks behind them.
But there are some real upside. Like, who knows what Georgia Tech looks like year 1 with Damon Stoudemire? Does NC State running back? How different does Syracuse look like for the first time in forever? And we'll get into. I mean, let's mention, like, this is a good transition to Syracuse. Judah Mintz is back, or is committing, and he's back to Syracuse. So when you look at Mintz to the Orange Men and what he brings to this group, how does that change your calculus for what Syracuse looks like next year?
Syracuse actually feels a little underrated to me among the ACC, like by projection systems, and it's not something I anticipated saying really because I didn't like the Syracuse roster 2 months ago. But the more I've thought about it, the more it makes sense. Like, Mintz is a very good player. You got some intriguing role pieces in Malik Brown, Benny Williams, an interesting reclamation project in J.J. Starling, who was awful last season for Notre Dame. 91 offensive rating, 30% from 3. That was a guy who I liked a lot more as a recruit than I did at Notre Dame. I remember discussing him last summer. So I wonder if a change of scenery, change of offense could do him good. I don't think they're a tournament team, but I think, right now Torvik has them 13th in a 15-team ACC. Could definitely see them finishing top 10, which would be a good step in the right direction. And I think, to be honest, I could see just not like a true dead cat bounce where they're like immediately it's like the new manager bounce in soccer, where it's like they got rid of the old, and just because that's off their back, they're going to be a little better. I do think just like they could have a little bit of like, we don't have to deal with this old guy on the sideline anymore who runs a system we don't like. We can kind of do something new. I think that's going to energize them. And, I mean, they have a lot of talent on their roster that's largely been underdeveloped and hasn't been touched. I mean, a mid-pack ACC finish isn't out of the question for them. I think they're going to be they're a tough team to truly project because they have so many moving pieces, but I like them more than I think most people are giving them credit for.
I think that's fair, and I'm just excited about what Red Autry is going to do with this group, right? Like, then defense is going to be different. I think this is going to be a more intriguing team, and like you said, the ACC, a lot of question marks, and I think Syracuse is a good buy low, bounce back candidate among just a very cluttered group outside of Duke. I think Duke still is probably the only one that you would be like, all right, there's no way this team cannot be really good next year. I think that's the only team in the ACC that you're looking at them in that regard, right?
Yeah. And Syracuse is going to have to play a really interesting style because they lost Jesse Edwards to West Virginia, which kind of seemed to be like pretty purely an NIL move, which is fine. Like, I mean, go get your dollars. But what it's going to do is more or less force them to play pretty small. Their tallest player is Naheem McLeod, who's 7'4" from Florida State. But I don't really rate him that highly. I think he's probably about like their 8th best player. The rest of the roster is 6'8" or shorter. So there's a real chance that they're going to play significant stretches of games, if not the majority of games, with a 6'8" center and 5 guys on the court who are capable of hitting a 3, which is not something we've seen at Syracuse ever.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something new to watch, which I like.
For sure. Speaking of things that are new that you're going to like watching, the Caleb Love experience is on his way to Arizona. Here's what's interesting to me, and it seems like I was listening to, I think, Field of 68 guys, Goodman and company, when this happened a few weeks ago, where they're pretty ardent about the fact that Caleb Love doesn't make this move if he's not planning on starting. And you look at that Arizona roster and you're like, and just his play style, and we've talked about it this very show, it lends itself more to like that J.R. Smith off the bench, like 6-man guy. Like if he is the third guard, you feel a lot better about Caleb Love. If you're not building your offense around Caleb Love, it feels a lot better. But I push back on that where I'm like, I think in general, you could say that about certain things, but it's like, I mean, Tennessee, like you bring in Chris Ledlam and Dalton Connect, and I'm sure both went in to the transfer thinking like, hey, we should be in a good position to start if we're going to make this kind of move for our last year of college eligibility. Like we have NBA draft aspirations, this, that, and the other. It's like Josiah Jordan James came back, and now we'll see who are going to be the most important 5, but someone's going to get left out. But like Rick Barnes is going to play the best 5 and the 5 that he trusts. Tommy Lloyd, I think at this point, has earned a lot of respect. He is obviously in a position of strength at Arizona based on where Arizona is and where they've been the last couple of years, that like I don't necessarily believe that's true, where it's like, hey, Caleb, you don't have a lot of options right now. You're running out of options. Like it's either you come here to a better situation, we could use you, but like we are not guaranteeing you anything. And if it makes the team better by you coming off the bench, that's gonna happen. So I think people are getting caught up in whether or not he starts or what that looks like, or he wouldn't make this move unless he thought he's gonna be. I'm like, Tommy Lloyd in this group doesn't strike me as the type that would just acquiesce to Caleb Love in that regard, if that's what it came up as. I think that's silly. And if Caleb Love is better as a third guard, great, then Arizona will do that. If he actually develops and is a better player than what we've seen to this point in UNC, and Tommy Lloyd gets through to him in different ways, that's fine too. But I think people harp on that a little too much, and I think it's a wait and see, and I think Tommy Lloyd deserves the benefit of the doubt on this a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the best version of Caleb Love is one that's off the ball. Like, I really, really do not like him as a ball handler. Gets himself into a lot of negative shooting situations. Just a lot of some really horrendous shooting selection from him in general. And truth be told, I'd take at least 2 of their guards over him. I think Jaden. I mean, I definitely think it depends on if you consider Pelle Larson a guard. I think he's like a wing guard hybrid. Definitely a better player. I think Jaden Bradley is better, the Alabama transfer, and it's arguable that Kylan Boswell is better. I know he's a far better defender than Caleb Love is. And so I agree with you. I don't think that this is necessarily he's coming there to start. I mean, you can make an argument, and a fairly feasible one, that he's, their 4th or 5th best player. Probably 4th. And I don't think that's going to be a popular take, but at minimum, I think Ballo and Larson are better. I think Boswell might be better, and I think Bradley might be better. And that's before you get to Keyshawn Johnson, who I don't think is like an amazing player, but was a huge piece of the San Diego State team last year and a good 2-way guy. There's a chance where, like you said, the 6-man role is best for him. As like the microwave, basically, the Jordan Poole of the roster at his best. I don't think I think he elevates their ceiling a little bit, but also lowers their floor, where you give him a lot of minutes. And I mean, people kind of like to do the whole, we're underrating Caleb Love because he had 1 bad year. And it's like, I think we overrated Caleb Love because he had 2 good games. I mean, the only 2 games where it's like anybody remembers from him are the UCLA game and the Duke game from their title game run. He was atrocious against Kansas in the title game. I looked it up before we started recording. 13 points on 24 shots. That's insane. And that's not to. And that's.
I remember him being really gassed in that game, and that's what a lot of folks, they spent a lot of time on the broadcast. I remember being like, Caleb Love clearly is out of gas. Like Caleb Love is clearly gone.
Yeah, and like that's fine. I mean, you're allowed to have a bad game, but that comes after same tournament, 5 points, 6 turnovers against Baylor, and he fouled out. He has, I mean, you're going to get a game from Caleb Love where it's like, oh my God, he went for 21-8 and Arizona just beat USC by 19. And then 2 days later, you're going to look up and say, oh my God, Caleb Love just posted 7-7 points and turnovers in a loss to Washington. That's the type of player he is. And you're going to have to learn and live with it. And it's kind of like Kerr Kriisa upgraded in a way. Like Kerr Kriisa with better SEO, I suppose, and less annoyance. So I don't know. I can see where this could work. I can also see a lot of ways in which it couldn't. But like you said, I think Tommy Lloyd's earned the respect at this point. I think, I don't think it's controversial to say he's probably a better coach than Hubert is, and definitely a better offensive coach than Hubert, and better at getting the most out of that side of the ball. But I don't think it's going to fix Arizona's problem of having a very attackable guard on defense.
That's fair. We'll stay in the Pac-12 here for a second, Will. We're doing this around different conferences this offseason, and I want to parse your brain here. The Pac-12 team that struggled last year, that you now like their roster and scheme now. It cannot be Cal. I'm not letting you be Cal.
I love Cal. Love this
I know
Cal
you
team.
love Cal. It can't be Cal.
So I did some research for this one more so than usual because I actually had a couple I was pondering. I think USC is a very easy pick, and I'm not going to go that direction just because they got more talented.
Yeah, Isaiah Collier in the fold. No.
The team that made the smartest moves without a huge war chest behind them is Colorado. I like a lot of what they bring back. So KJ Simpson, he of Torturing Tennessee, returns. Tristan Da Silva will be back, or I think he transfers in. My bad. I'm thinking of a different Da Silva. Tristan Da Silva is back for his 4th season. But they got Cody Williams, a top 5 recruit, which is, again, shocking for Colorado.
Yeah.
Eddie Lampkin from TCU transfers in. Lots of likable pieces that they have. I don't know that aside from Simpson, I like any of them as scorers. But I think that, once again, Tad Boyle is going to have a nasty defense. It's just like his thing they always have is you can pretty much guarantee Colorado is going to be really tough to break down because they switch a lot. They have a lot of weird schemes they put out. They can move from man to zone pretty easily, and they are tenacious. And when Tennessee has played them in the past, purely as a viewer, I really haven't enjoyed it because I think they do a great job of shutting down what Tennessee wants to do. And Tad Boyle, great coach, just top to bottom, really likable guy. They're going to be a really interesting team to watch because they're going to have a logjam in the front court of sorts where Lampkin, Da Silva, and Williams all are starter-level players, but you can't start all 3 together because you don't want to start multiple non-shooters. So they're going to have to pick 2 of those 3, and I don't think you're going to bench the 5-star top 5 recruit. And I don't think you're going to bench an all Pac-12 level guy in Da Silva, but then you have Lampkin, who is so dominant at TCU when he was healthy. So I'm not sure what they're going to resolve there, but it's a lot of talent. I like Simpson a lot. I think he's an awesome player to watch. Julian Hammond is an underrated piece in the backcourt. The more I look at them, the more I like them as a borderline top 25 team. And I don't know, the Pac-12 in general strikes me as a very fun conference this coming season, where as it has in years past, there's a lot of. So I mean, you're gonna have USC, right? Like that's the one everybody's gonna watch. And I don't love this UCLA roster, but I think it's just sort of like you give Mick Cronin the benefit of the doubt more often than you don't. Same with Arizona. And then beyond that, you got Colorado, who I think I could make an argument for as having the second best team in the Pac-12. Maybe not roster talent, but team organization. You have Oregon, who really needs a good year. You have Utah, who had about half of a great year last year and sort of cratered towards the end. And then you've got a lot of intriguing pieces. You got Stanford, who badly needs to make the NCAA tournament before the earth melts. You have Washington State, who kind of needs the same deal. They need to break through. You've got Cal, who I really love, with Mark Madsen. I could give you a good reason to like or be interested in 10 of the 12 teams in the conference.
Did you leave out Washington?
I forgot Washington. I still don't like Mike Hopkins. I think he's an openly middling coach.
Also, he's like the coach in like different conferences. You're like, who is it now? Because like you forget that he didn't get fired like 2 years ago, where it went off the rails at UW a while ago, and he's still just hanging around. And you look it up, you're like, I could have sworn I saw on the ticker on ESPN a year and a half ago that Mike Hopkins had been let go at UW, and he is still there.
Yeah, it's amazing he hasn't, to be honest. But
Yeah.
they're going to be
the
interesting
situation.
because they're just so old. Their top 6 players are all seniors. Which is, I mean, that could be like they're already mid and they're not going to get any better. But it could also mean they're just older and bigger than everybody else, which happens in college basketball. Yeah. You see teams just like pop off a solid year because they were old. It's like Penn State this past season. They were very, very old college basketball players. I don't know. I could give you a reason to be interested in or like 10 of the 12 rosters.
That's fair. That's fair. And then if you really want to get the big-time recruits, you want to make sure you add a zip line to the back pool area. That's a great recruiting tool because you might have a kid, you might have a 5-star kid who's really into that. And
then your 5-star is too rough on the rope, and he keeps riding the zip line over and over. And it forces Mike from Entertainment 360 to come out and tell you you're too rough on the rope.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you got to watch the show, folks, to know what we're talking about here. Deep cuts. Just don't ask us about our kids. Kansas gets a big returning player, and they are looking like they might be the favorite once again. It's almost like we talked about where it's like last year we liked Kansas coming into the year. They were going to be one of the 5 best teams in college basketball, but it's just so rare for teams to repeat. And obviously Bill Self dealt with the health scare and during the tournament time, and it was going to be hard, and then that only made it even harder. McCullough's back in the fold, though. You look at this Kansas roster, Grady Dick out, probably a lottery pick, it looks like, here for Kansas. But when you look at this group, Will, with who they're bringing back, who they recruited, what it's going to look like in the Big 12, which is increasingly a more loaded Big 12, does Kansas feel like to you that they're geared up for a favorite year where they are the number 1 team in college basketball once again?
I don't know about number 1, but I think they're going to be in contention for it. I feel like we're in for another year where it's like 8 different teams get to be number 1. And so Kansas will probably inevitably be top at some point.
Do you think Tennessee will?
Maybe. It's going to depend on... I don't think they will in the non-conference because their non-conference slate is pretty nasty unless they can manage like a 0 or 1 loss run through it.
Which is possible, though.
It's plausible. And like SEC-wise, I'm sure they could string together a nice run based on schedule. But the problem with being in the Big 12 is you have to play at the Big 12. Yes. And so you're probably not going to be number 1 for long if you get there. But the thing with McCullough, I like him a lot more as a defensive piece than I do offensively. I think he's like kind of secretly a bad offensive player.
Yeah.
Moves the ball okay, decent on the boards, but awful shooter. 29% for his career, has yet to top 31% in a season. He can get to the rim, but a jumper, anytime he takes a jumper, the opponent celebrates. That's not really what you want. And I'm not totally convinced of them as a shooting roster yet. So Dickinson, great shooter for a big. Love having him in your roster, but you don't know much about KJ Adams as a shooter. Nick Timberlake did it at a mid-major. We don't know how well he can do it against a much, much tougher group of opponents. Don't know much about Arterio Morris yet as a shooter. We talked about McCullough. Dwan Harris, not really proven as a shooter. So you got a lot riding on a variety of like freshmen or pieces that you don't have a ton of data on shooting-wise that I think is a little worrisome for Kansas's aspect. But at the same time, you're pretty much guaranteed for Bill Self to get the most out of a roster again. And, maybe I've undersold Harris a bit as a shooter. Maybe he can keep his efficiency with greater volume. Maybe, Adams develops a three-point shot. Maybe McCullers finally finds his stroke in year 6 or whatever it is for him. But I'm not totally convinced they're number 1, but I will not be surprised at all if they end up the best team or, no worse than top 5.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think who the last 20 years have won 2 in 3 years. Who comes to mind? Has anyone done it?
Villanova and Florida are the only 2.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
UNC close. I think UNC had 2 and 4 or 2 and 5.
Okay. Will, deep dive team from 2022 here. Creighton. The Creighton Blue Jackets. Blue Jays. There's the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then there's the Creighton Blue Jays. It's very annoying. But they lose an important cog in the portal. A couple in the portal. One to Gonzaga, which is no surprise, and one to, where did he wind up just this week? Why am I blanking? Where did he wind up? Baylor? No, where did he go? Creighton. Who am I thinking of right now?
You're thinking of Ryan Nembhard to Gonzaga,
right?
And then Arthur Kaluma to
Kaluma,
Kansas State.
Yeah. Where did he end up?
He is at Kansas State.
Kansas State, that's right. Okay, there you go. So those two out the door there. But when you look at what the 2022 Creighton team looked like, how they performed, deep tourney run, good year for McDermott. Been able to keep McDermott for this long without him jumping for another job, just to see what he would do potentially at like a Texas or something like that with all the resources in the world. I think you and I agree, one of the better coaches in the sport, better offenses, better developer of talent. Your guy Baylor Schneiderman coming into last year, you were pretty high on that addition, but what did you see from Creighton? Did they overachieve, underachieve, based kind of got to where you thought, and is the future still bright going into next year for Creighton?
I thought they had a really fascinating year of narratives, where they start out 6-0, come up just shy in Maui against Arizona, but you beat you beat Arkansas in what was a great game. You beat Texas Tech before you knew Texas Tech was just kind of middling, and so 6-1, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a top 10 team that everybody saw coming. And then December happens, and they lose 6 in a row, including some pretty big stinkers to Nebraska and Arizona State. And BYU, which I had forgotten about. And they're 6-6, and you're like, what do we do with this team? They're clearly not the top 10 team we thought they were preseason, but are they as bad as the stretch? And they had played some of those without Ryan Kalkbrenner, who missed I think 3 games with injury. But once Big East play started, it was like they hit the reset button and they were fine again. You go from 9-8 to a 21-12 finish. So 12 of 16 right there, including some really strong victories over UConn at home, over Xavier. But they ended up being stronger in the metrics than they were by the polls, which is the reverse dynamic you saw in the preseason, where the polls had them, I think, 9th, but KenPom had them 23rd. So it was a strange reversal of fortune for them, where I wasn't as high on them as the pollsters were coming into the season, but once you got to the tournament, you were like, oh, they are arguably the best team in the bottom half of their bracket. It's going to be them or Arizona, and once Arizona lost to Princeton, the path for them to make a little surprise Elite Eight run was wide open. But that was the best McDermott's done so far in terms of marrying a good offense with a good defense. I feel like when we've seen Creighton before, they've had one or the other, and it's more commonly been the good offense. So the Doug years, you had an elite offense, top 5 3 years in a row, but 3 straight middling or terrible defenses to go with it. And then last season, you had a great defense, top 20 in the nation, with a makeshift roster, but an awful offense where no one could score. And then finally this year, you had both. You had top 15 defense and a top 25 offense, one that seemed to get quite a bit better as the season went on. They were never elite offensively, but they were very good at finding their spots. Great at finding quality twos. Had a lot of good shooters on the roster. Obviously Shireman, but Trey Alexander was excellent. Kalkbrenner was dominant in the paint for a big. Nembhard, great inside and out. Some good bench pieces that people have forgotten about too. Mason Miller, surprisingly, a very good shooter off the bench for them. But I liked a lot of what he did throughout the season. They got stronger as the season went on. And, generally I don't love picking those teams come March because they're pretty easy fades. Like, it was how UConn was a lot better the first half than the second. Those are the type of teams. Same with Tennessee. Those are the type of teams you want to hunt in March because March is the great reset. It presses the button. Everything is anew. Like, you're not seeing the same teams in the same routine over and over and over. But they surprised me and a lot of people by, you get past NC State, which is one thing, but, them only beating Baylor by 9 is pretty deceptive. They had the pedal to the metal for a large portion of that game. And then, take care of a 15 seed, come up a point short on what some are going to call a controversial call against SDSU, but I think was the right call, them fouling Trammell. But I like a lot of what they've done. They've adapted to the Big East well. I think they have a good budget behind them as well, both for program ops and for NIL purposes, of getting Kalkbrenner back, of getting some other key pieces back, Shireman back for another run, and then just some good moves they've made elsewhere. Like getting Stephen Ashworth from Utah State is a tremendous ad. Like that guy, tremendous shooter, 41% for his career, great ball handler. They're going to be fun to watch once again. And so I remain excited for what he's doing there. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see them as a top 10 team for the second straight year in a row. Only this time I think they're going to have a better shot of upholding that hype in the regular season.
Are they the preseason best Big East team for you?
Probably. It's them or UConn, and it is a coin flip. I like both rosters a lot. I would give a very, very tiny edge to Creighton. But I think it's 1A, 1B situation with Marquette close behind.
Are they a dark horse 1 seed come tournament time?
Sure. I mean, they could be. The Big East
They've never been a 1 seed before,
though.
right? There's no way.
No. I think the top they've ever been is a 3.
Okay.
But I guess they would have been a 2 had the COVID tournament happened. But, yeah, I mean, Big East this year is going to be quite the frisky conference where it's, them, UConn, Marquette. But Villanova figures to be a lot better. You have St. John's as a rejuvenated roster. Providence has a lot of talent, but a year 1 head coach, which is always an interesting dynamic. Xavier should be solid. Seton Hall should be a little better. Maybe you get a year 1 bump for Georgetown. I don't really know about that. But, that's going to be a really good conference on the whole. And whoever comes out on the top is going to be a very deserving and very battle-tested champion.
For sure. Will, stats caught your eye in the last month? Do you have any? What's your go-to stat for us here tonight as we wrap up?
I wish I had a better one, but you can scroll through the talent ratings on Bart Torvik's site, because I've been doing this I had a post about both FAU and Kentucky recently. They're separate posts, but the FAU one was sort of diminishing the hype a little bit, and the Kentucky one was sounding the alarm, because I really do believe Kentucky's in trouble this coming season unless they can add a player who has played a college basketball game before.
It is weird, right? Like, I mean, Kentucky losing Oscar Tshiebwe, but
it's not just that. It's like losing Arthur Kaluma to Kansas State.
Yeah,
like
and
that
also
didn't
just
happen 3 years ago.
They just have they haven't been like It's so weird because I mean, Kentucky sports radio folks have been all over this. Where I'm reading different pieces on it, and then like Austin Reeves, like the stuff today where he's like trying to graduate this summer, so he enrolled at Illinois State, and if he finishes the summer, then he can be a grad transfer and he'll play somewhere. Like, you just look at all the different dudes and who's gonna be on this roster, and like you said, like they've recruited unbelievably well. Like, this is going to be an uber talented young group of guys, but they have struck out in weird ways to a lot of teams, like you said, with Kansas State and company, where like this should not happen at Kentucky. And I don't know if it gets cleaned up in the next year, but this is going to be extremely weird of a season for Kentucky.
Yes.
There's no way it goes either. There's no way they're a mid-level team. They're either awesome and this all works with their young players, or this is a disaster.
I could see them. I don't think they're going to be awesome, but I think like they could be top 15, or they could just be an NIT team.
Yeah.
Stats of the week. I've been playing. So that was all to say. I've been playing with Bart Torvik's talent rating a lot lately, and finding comparisons to UK and FAU especially. I was looking for. But the top 4 teams in his talent rating, which is just who has the most on paper, both recruiting and returning talent in college basketball, largely recruiting. Can you guess what conference has the top 4 teams in this metric in America? And we have discussed 3 of those teams in this episode.
Oh, Big 12?
The ACC.
Oh, ACC. Okay.
Can you name the 4 teams?
And what were the parameters again?
Top 4 teams in on-paper recruiting talent.
On-paper recruiting talent. 4 teams. Duke.
Correct.
North Carolina.
Yeah, that's 2.
Yeah.
And it's going to get tough from here.
Miami?
Miami is not one.
Okay. Let me think for a second. Definitely not UVA.
I'm going to give you a spoiler that these two programs have changed coaches in the last 2 calendar years.
Oh, so it's not Pitt. I was going to be like Dark Horse Pitt. They have not changed coaches in the last 2 years.
They have.
They have. Oh. Notre Dame?
It's not Notre Dame. Notre Dame is close. They're top 25-ish.
Not Boston College. Who am I? I'm trying to think. Not Tech. There's no way it's Georgia Tech.
No.
I don't know. Just tell me. Who is it?
It's Syracuse and Louisville.
I forgot about Louisville. Like, Louisville was an obvious one with their talent. That makes sense. Okay.
So, and obviously, you don't want to like think too much into it because Louisville had, I think, 6 top 100 former recruits in the roster last year and were god awful.
Mm-hmm.
But they did add a couple more this offseason.
Yeah.
You return Huntley Hatfield, Sky Clark, or well, they get Sky Clark, and we'll see how that goes. Mike James, Trey White, etc. It's an extraordinarily talented roster of 17-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is some of them are 19 through 23 now. And so you don't really know if they're going to be any good under Kenny Payne. But see, and that's why I'm more into Syracuse than I am Louisville. I know what a talented roster looks like at Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it last year and I was not impressed. Maybe I think they could get a lot better this year, but I don't know that for sure. At Syracuse, I don't know about Red Autry. And I'm more interested by their ceiling than I am their floor. Where you've got Mintz, you've got Starling, the former 5-star. Benny Williams, I think, was either a 5-star or a borderline 5-star. Chris Bell was a top 100 recruit by some services. Malik Brown, fairly well recruited. Chance Westry from Auburn, former 4-star. It's a lot of on-paper talent that's all sophomore and juniors, which means they could take a surprising bump. They have a very high ceiling and a extraordinarily low floor, like a Louisville last year level floor, if it doesn't work out. But I just found that interesting that one conference could have the top 4 and then basically nothing after it. Like the next team up is Notre Dame and they're in the 20s.
Wow.
And fun fact, I would like you to guess who is number 5 on this list.
Did I already guess it?
No, it's a Big Ten team.
Oh.
And they are in a state that borders many Great Lakes.
Oh, Michigan State?
It is the University of Michigan.
Oh.
Ton of on-paper talent. Questionable coach.
Yeah.
So that's the fun of the talent metric is like you can see the ones like Duke. Obviously, they're going to be crazy talented, lots of returners. Obviously, they're going to be good. But what about these teams that have taken chances on old 4 and 5 stars? What happens with them?
It's going to be fun. Hey, have you heard this? This is why they roll the ball out and play the game well. This is why they do it. Will Warren, what can the good folks check out from you over on the Substack? statsbywill.substack.com. Subscribe today if you have not already done so. But what can the good folks look out for you over there this week?
I put up a post on Tuesday about Kentucky's forebears, aka teams that have been extremely low on experience but relatively high on talent. How have those teams performed in years past? Is this team going to, be like the 2018-19 team with Hero, PJ Washington, etc., or are they going to be Nerlens Noel Part 2? Obviously, with 5 months till the season, you're just playing hypotheticals here, but it's better than nothing. I got more projects coming out. I'm still trying to get a solid data set on short-range jumpers versus floaters. And so far, they are dead equal from the data I've acquired, which is fascinating. There's not a significant difference in field goal percentage for one versus the other, even though every coach I talk to preaches shooting off of 2 feet versus 1.
Interesting.
There you go. It's a vindication for my buddy who used to do 3-point floaters to piss off opponents and pick up.
3-point floaters.
And it was very strange. He could not hit many other shots, but he was very good at this one trick shot. And he won us a game single-handedly doing it as his opponent refused to guard him and progressively got angrier and angrier every time he hit one.
What was your what's your most dominant pickup move or skill set? Because
defense.
Okay, it's funny.
Extremely good at defense. The one shot I can hit with any regularity is like a 15-foot jumper.
If I were to tell you that I was, after my AAU days and my retirement post-college and playing at the local LA Fitness for many years on some Thursday and Tuesday night runs. My Sunday runs were probably the favorite because everyone was off work. Sundays were pretty competitive and good. But to stay on the floor with a bunch of adult men who were a lot bigger than me, like I could always shoot, but I pressed. Like I was someone who was pressing like it's 1-0 and we're doing full, like I'm like in your ear pressing and like it's you're not gonna have a good time. That's like the good thing about being a runner in pickup basketball in your 20s, because you're totally fine just playing full on that, and that's just an easy way to wear out the opposing team's best player. And I would wear people out in that way.
That's my thing is I do use the running skills in pickup, but it's just off of screens. Like I spend most of the time on offense because I hate ball handling because I know I'm not good at it and I don't want to cause a bunch of turnovers for our team. So I try to just be as off ball as possible and just sprint across the court, like constantly come off the screens and just wear down the defender.
So Jaylen Brown should watch a lot of Will Warren summer ball tape. So he stops dribbling and he just gives it up.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
That's my. I've got two skills, and they're probably like the most infuriating things for people playing pickup is like playing solid defense. Like I try to not foul. I mean, like you're going to because you're not as skilled as a real college player. But like trying to not foul while playing good defense, and then just running nonstop on offense. It can rile up the right guy, which is what I'm trying to do.
1,000%. Being in really good shape is unbelievable for pickup. If you are in good running shape, that's the best thing, is running off screens, and then full court press is what you want to do.
The best is when you run a zone, though, and you convince your team. I've been in like a couple games where a guy's like, we're going to do a 2-3 zone. I'm like, okay, I know how to run that. Does anybody else on this court remember how to run a 2-3 zone?
It never works. 2-3 zone never works in pickup. Maybe when you have a league team and stuff like that, like I did that in my 20s. But if you're doing like just a random pickup, getting 5 strangers to communicate and play a quality 2-3 zone is damn near impossible.
Yeah. Or playing with, and this is not an ageist thing, but playing with old guys. Old guys love playing below the free throw line.
Yes.
Which is horrendous for offensive spacing. So it's like you have two dudes, like two 50-year-olds always posting up, and then it's like the game is played within like 20 square feet. And it drives me insane watching it.
I'm glad that my pickup days I'm retired, Will, because like my knees and
I mostly am too at this point.
It's just your bodies can't do it. Like our bodies are just can't do it. Like you're hungover.
I can do like 2 games, but the worst was when I'd be having a lot of fun, and then you get suckered into like a 6-game Saturday or something.
Yeah, because if you win, you're gonna keep playing. You're not, and you won't feel it in the moment. You'll feel it tomorrow. You'll feel it in the next. Like mine was when I didn't have health insurance and I was bartending in my late 20s, where I was like, oh, I just like messed up my knee again. Like I have to, like I don't have a choice here. Like this is insane. Like I can't keep doing this. My wife actually did the same thing in her early 20s with soccer, where she got hurt and she was like, oh right, this is not good. I think she broke her wrist playing soccer, and she was like, this isn't good. I don't have a backup. Like you can't really play pickup sports in your 20s if you don't have a job with good benefits, because you're gonna get injured.
That's the thing. I can't play it I've already committed so much time to running, but
yeah,
I do miss the sensation of like a good pickup game.
Yeah.
And then, but that and like the way we used to do it, I had a group that would play Thursday nights at a church in Maryville, which is south of Knoxville, for those who have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, no one even in Maryville knows, because you just called it Maryville, not Maryville.
It's Maryville.
It's Maryville.
Though it is Louisville, I will admit.
So you'll acquiesce to that, but not Maryville.
Yeah. It's Maryville. But either way, we would play on Thursday nights, and they have this McDonald's off the exit, like before you get back on whatever highway that is to get back to Knoxville, 140. And I loved pulling through that drive-thru at 9:30 p.m. and ordering 2 chicken sandwiches and a large fry. Amazing after you've played 6 pickup games.
There you go.
Miss those days a little bit. Not a lot, but a little.
Look at Chad Johnson over here, refueling with McDonald's after a good workout. Only Ocho Cinco could respect it. Will Warren, thank you as always, my friend, and I will talk to you next week.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.